Have you ever asked yourself the question, what is my purpose in life? I have asked myself that question many times. My name is Lawrence C. Dunbar II, also known as Bop, to family, friends, and people in the streets. I'm a Rochester, New York native. This is my story, a blessing in disguise, the redemption of Lawrence C. Dunbar II. My story picks up at the age of 12. My mother, siblings, and I moved to a new neighborhood. I started a new school, Jefferson Middle School. I met new friends. This is when my life began to change. I became less interested in my academics and started skipping class, hanging out with my friends. During school hours, I would hang in the school bathroom, rolling dice. Some days I would leave campus chasing girls. I was doing everything but going to class. Eventually I was kicked out of school, and the only way to be readmitted if I agreed to an alternative program, Jefferson Express. My daily routine consisted of going to school, coming home, and dropping off my book bag. I would hang with my friends on the street corners of Thurston Road. I didn't really like being home because my mother was going through her own personal challenges. I was my own man. I had no parental guidance and no curfew. One day, a friend and I was approached by a neighborhood drug dealer. He asked us if we wanted to make some money. I quickly said yes, without knowing what I was getting myself into. This was my introduction to selling drugs.
Cash rules everything around me. Cream gets the money. Dollar bill, yo.
I sold cocaine because that's what the drug of choice was during my era. Shortly after entering the dope game, I purchased my first gun. I wanted to protect myself in case someone tried to rob or harm me. The streets had many benefits, and there were also downsides. There was violence, death, and incarceration. At a very young age, I realized I could be taken out at any time. I became desensitized to death. I've attended wake after wake, funeral after funeral for fellow friends in the streets. As this cycle of selling drugs continued to grow, I started making more money. When I was 15 years old, I felt like I was on my way to the top. My ambition was to be the biggest drug dealer on the East Coast. My team was solid. I had people working for me. Life was good until it took a major turn. One day I was preparing a batch of cocaine to sell to a customer. My friends and I were on bikes to deliver the drugs. I guess 5 African American males on bikes looked suspicious because a patrolling officer asked us to stop. I couldn't afford to be questioned or searched, so I acted like I didn't hear him and walked casually up a stranger's driveway. When I made it to the backyard, I tossed my gun in one bush, my scale in another, and I dropped the drugs on the ground. The officer walked in the backyard and put me in handcuffs. I was taken to a police car while other officers were in the backyard searching for evidence. I was nervous because I was scared that they might find the gun. I was arrested a week before my 16th birthday. My attorney informed me that the district attorney wanted to charge me as an adult and give me 3 to 9 years in prison. He later informed me I was going to be charged as a juvenile. It was found that the evidence was tampered with. When I went before the judge, I was given 12 to 18 months in a juvenile delinquent facility. The night I was arrested was a memorable moment. It was a night I would never forget. 3 out of 5 of us from that day have been killed as a result to the streets. Now I'm serving time, and I'm angry. I became the statistic. I was a young African American male who became a product of his environment, serving time for selling drugs. This one I knew life had to change. After serving 2 months in Rochester, New York, I was transferred to a new facility, Lincoln Hall. This is where I was to serve the remainder of my time. While at Lincoln Hall, my life transitioned in a positive way. One day I prayed to God that if He delivered my mom from the challenges she was faced with, I would no longer sell drugs. and my mom had been delivered from her challenges ever since that prayer. There were 3 employees at Lincoln Hall that were very influential in my life. The first was an African American male cottage supervisor. He taught me that my world was bigger than my neighborhood and there were unlimited possibilities. He reminded me of this every day. The second person was an African American female social worker. She introduced me to the career of social work, and one day she sat me down and had me talk to another resident. She had me share my life story, and it was at that moment I realized I wanted to become a social worker. The third person was a caseworker who taught me how to communicate more effectively. She would count how many times I would use slang words using her fingers when she and I spoke. I discovered that I was very athletic at Lincoln Hall, and I had an excitement for basketball and track and field. Lincoln Hall was not my first choice of places to be, but it was where I needed to be. It was the blessing in disguise.
Lord, give me a sign. Show me what I got to do to bring me closer to you. Cause I'ma go through whatever you want me to. Just let me know what to do. Lord, give me a sign.
After serving my time, I was released back to my mother. Within 3 days of being back in Rochester, New York, I crossed paths with one of my drug suppliers. He had a brown bag full of money, dumped it out, handed me some, and told me to call him when I was ready. I told my mom about this interaction, and she quickly called my caseworker. She said, "You need to get him out of here." My mother signed her rights over to the state of New York, and I became a ward of the court. She wanted me away from the area where I sold drugs because she didn't want me to throw the rest of my life away in prison or end up dead. I was moved to a group home in a suburban area of Rochester, New York, Gates Chali. I started a new school, Gates Chali High School. I learned about cultural diversity at the school. There was a small percentage of African American students. I learned to interact with different cultures. I worked hard, received great grades, and became a track and field star. After I graduated from Gates Chali, I wrote a thank you letter to the staff at Lincoln Hall. Dear staff, thank you for teaching me how to believe more in myself. I can recall conversations we had. Don't be surprised if you find the information we talked about inside of a book or a movie. I then went on to attend Monroe Community College, where I achieved my associate's degree. I continued my education at SUNY Brockport College and transferred to Morgan State University, located in Baltimore, Maryland. I became spiritually enriched, grown professionally, and I've learned how to be more in life. I had reached a point in life where I needed to see something and do something different. I spoke to a cousin in Hollywood, California, and he encouraged me to move. I was nervous about the transition, and then eventually I took a leap of faith, resigned from my job, and moved to Los Angeles, California. I didn't have a well thought out plan when I moved to Los Angeles, and I didn't care. I was able to reposition myself. I started working with youth and became inspired to get my master's to be able to affect greater change. I applied to University of Southern California, USC, and I was accepted. I was anxious to attend USC because I had been out of school for some years and I didn't know what to expect. Once I pushed past my worried thoughts, I loved my experience. I worked hard and became an honor student. Having the opportunity to be in a stimulating environment with like-minded people was priceless. I met some phenomenal students and staff at USC. When I was a child, I didn't foresee myself living to the age of 21. I was least likely to make it and the first in my immediate family to attend college. Now I'm graduating from USC with my master's in social work. I'm here to tell you that your past doesn't define your future. Throughout life, I've realized you have a purpose, I have a purpose, this is my purpose.
It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine. Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up in the limousine. Hanging pictures on my wall. Every Saturday, rap attack Mr. Magic Marley Marl. I let my tape rock till my tape pop. Smoking weed and bamboo, sipping on private stock. Way back when I had the red and black lumberjack with the hat to match. Remember rapping Duke? The hard, you never thought that hip hop.